"Do you have a mate?" the Alpha King asked. She whispered, "Not yet," and he snapped with jealousy. Trees twisted like blackened spires, their branches reaching like fingers into the gray clouds. In the heart of this shadowed realm, the Alpha King Kale rode across the forest floor, his horse's hooves silent on the soft moss. He was tall and broad, a figure of raw power, and even the wind seemed to bend around him. His eyes, a stormy gray, searched for something, or someone, he could not yet name. Kale's kingdom was ruled by strict laws and unspoken magic. Every Alpha King of Eldrith carried a curse that had lasted centuries. If they failed to claim their destined mate, darkness would creep across the land, devouring crops, rivers, and hope itself. Kale had ruled for years, unmatched in strength, feared by enemies and adored by subjects, yet this curse had begun to weigh on him like an iron chain. He could feel its pulse beneath his skin, reminding him that destiny waited for no one. Deep in the forest, Lyra walked with careful steps. Her cloak was dark, blending with the shadows, but there was a light in her eyes that seemed to shimmer even under the gray sky. She did not belong to any kingdom, and she had no memory of a home beyond the forest. The villagers at the edge of Eldrith spoke her name with awe, claiming she had the sight of things that were hidden. Sometimes she saw flashes of the past, other times glimpses of a possible future, and often she did not understand the meaning of these visions. Today, the forest seemed alive with whispers. Leaves rustled like voices, and the mist curled around tree trunks as if urging her forward. She felt a strange pull in her chest, a force that called her to the clearing ahead. When she stepped into the open, Kale was already there waiting. He did not speak at first. He merely studied her, his eyes sharp and piercing. There was something in her presence that stirred something long dormant within him, a mix of curiosity, caution, and something darker he did not yet name. Finally, he asked, his voice low and commanding, "Do you have a mate?" Lyra blinked, startled. The question hung in the air like smoke, twisting and curling with tension. She hesitated, searching his face, and then whispered, "Not yet." Kale's jaw tightened. The word "yet" ignited a spark within him, one that he had struggled to control all his life. He had never felt jealousy like this before, not even when armies challenged his rule or when rivals tried to take what was his. This was different. This was personal. "You will not," he said, his tone more a warning than a promise. But beneath the steel in his voice there was a tremor, an emotion he could not fully name. Lyra shivered slightly, sensing the tension. She had encountered kings before, men of power and pride, but Kale was unlike any she had known. He was both dangerous and compelling, and even as she tried to hide it, a spark of curiosity, of attraction, ignited in her heart. "I mean no harm," she said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of fear and courage. "I am only passing through." Kale's eyes narrowed. "No one simply passes through my lands." His tone was sharp, yet there was something beneath it, a strange vulnerability, as if he feared the answer as much as he desired it. Lyra nodded, understanding without knowing why. There was more to him than power, more than anger or pride. She could feel the weight of responsibility in his presence, the shadow of a curse that bound him. For a moment, the forest was silent except for the wind in the trees. Then, as if drawn by fate, Lyra took a step closer. "I do not belong to anyone," she admitted, almost to herself. "And yet, I feel I am meant to be somewhere." Kale's eyes softened slightly, though the tension in his jaw remained. "You speak as if destiny has chosen you already," he said, more to himself than to her. "Perhaps it has." Before more words could be exchanged, a rustling from the edge of the clearing caught their attention. A figure emerged from the shadows, a young man with ragged clothes and a wary expression. He froze when he saw Kale, but relief was visible in his eyes when he saw Lyra. "She's safe," he said, almost a plea. "I found her wandering near the river, and the shadows, they were following her." Kale's gaze sharpened and the storm within him flared. "Shadows follow everyone here," he said, his voice cold. You would do better to leave before they find you. Lyra stepped forward, placing herself slightly in front of the young man. They were not following me, she said firmly. I can see the danger before it arrives. Cale studied her closely. There was courage in her eyes, but also something he could not decipher, something ancient, powerful, and wild. He felt a stir in his chest, a pulse of desire he barely understood. And yet beneath that desire, jealousy burned fiercely. You are not like the others, he said finally, his voice quieter now, almost reluctant. You carry a power and you do not know its weight. Lyra tilted her head, sensing the truth in his words. Neither do you, she replied softly. We are both bound by things we cannot fully see. For a brief moment they stood in silence, the tension thick and electric. Then, without warning, the young man before them stumbled backward, a shadow rising behind him. Cale's instincts took over. In a heartbeat he drew his sword, its edge shimmering with a faint blue light, the mark of his alpha blood. The shadow lunged, dark and writhing like living smoke, but Cale was faster. With one precise strike he cut it down and it vanished into a scream that echoed through the forest. Lyra watched, her breath catching. You saved him. Cale sheathed his sword, his gaze fixed on her. I save those who matter, he said, each word heavy with meaning. His jealousy flared again, sharp and possessive. No one else should touch her, the thought burned in his mind. The young man recovered, trembling. Thank you, my lord, he stammered. I did not mean to, Cale waved him away. Leave this place. You are no longer part of this moment. Once the man fled into the shadows, Cale turned fully to Lyra. You should leave too, he said, his voice a mixture of warning and longing. It is dangerous here for more than just shadows. Lyra felt a strange pull in her chest, a tug toward the man who seemed both protector and captor. I cannot leave, she admitted, her voice trembling. Not yet. I need to understand what this feeling is. Cale's stormy gray eyes searched hers, a mixture of fury, longing, and fear swirling within them. Feelings are dangerous, he warned, especially in a world where destiny is not kind to those who falter. For a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Then Lyra stepped closer, closing the distance between them, her hand almost brushing his. The air hummed with energy, thick with unspoken words, shared destiny, and the heavy shadow of the curse. Cale's hand twitched, wanting to reach for her, yet afraid of what might happen if he did. Jealousy burned again, sharper and fiercer than before. He could not bear the thought of another claiming her attention, her trust, her heart. You are mine, he said finally, almost in a whisper, though the words carried the weight of a command. Lyra's heart pounded. She did not know if he meant it as possession or protection. She could see the struggle within him, desire and fear, pride and vulnerability all fighting for dominance. I am not yours, not yet, she whispered back, but I am not yours to command. Cale's eyes darkened and the forest seemed to shiver around them. He wanted to argue, to demand obedience, to claim what he believed was fated. But he could feel the pull of her own will, strong and untamed, and for the first time in his life, he knew he could not bend her to him without cost. A gust of wind swept through the clearing, carrying the faintest whisper of a curse. Cale's hand tightened into a fist, the tension coiling like a serpent in his chest. Lyra shivered, sensing the danger yet again. The shadows are not done, Cale said, his voice low and dangerous, and neither is destiny. Lyra looked up at him, feeling the weight of his gaze and the storm it carried. Then we will face it together, she asked, her voice small yet resolute. Cale's lips pressed into a hard line. He wanted to say yes, to claim her fully, but the fear in his heart, the jealousy, the knowledge of the curse kept him silent. Instead, he simply nodded once sharply as the clouds above swirled and the forest held its breath. And then from the far edge of the clearing a shadow moved. It was not like the one Cale had destroyed. This one was silent, patient, and watching. Lyra sensed it first, a chill crawling down her spine. Kale's hand went to his sword instinctively, but even he could not see the threat fully. The words that left his mouth were quiet, almost a prayer, almost a warning. If she chooses another, then the darkness will awaken, and not even my kingdom can save her. Lyra met his gaze, a shiver of understanding passing between them. She did not yet know what the future held, nor did she understand the depth of Kale's jealousy or the true nature of the curse. But she knew one thing clearly. Her destiny had begun, and it was bound to this Alpha King in ways she could not yet fully see. And in that moment, the forest seemed to lean closer, the shadows stretching and waiting, as if the world itself had begun to whisper a warning that both of them could not ignore. The moon hung low over Eldrith, its pale light spilling across the twisted forest and the castle of the Alpha King Kale. The night was alive with whispers, leaves rustling like secret voices, the wind carrying scents of moss and damp earth, and shadows that moved with a life of their own. Lyra could feel the pulse of the forest, the quiet warning that danger was never far. After the events in the clearing, Kale insisted that Lyra stay within the castle walls, not as a prisoner but for her own safety. Yet Lyra sensed the tension in his every movement, the protective edge, the jealousy that simmered beneath his control. She wandered the halls, her steps careful on the cold stone floors, and studied the murals lining the grand corridors. They told stories of past Alpha Kings, each bound to their fated mate, each struggling against curses, wars, and betrayal. Kale watched her from the shadows of a doorway, his arms crossed, expression unreadable. Even from a distance, Lyra could feel the storm in him, strength tempered by fear, desire tangled with pride. She did not know whether to trust him completely, but the pull between them was undeniable. "You should not wander here alone," Kale said finally, his voice low and steady, though there was an unmistakable edge of tension. Lyra turned to face him, meeting his stormy gray eyes. "I am careful," she replied softly, though her heart raced at the intensity of his gaze. "And I need to understand why this place, why this castle, why you seem to care so much." Kale stepped closer, the air thick between them. "I care because you are not like others," he said, his tone almost a growl. "You have a strength, a sight that is rare, and he stopped as if the words themselves were dangerous. "I cannot let harm come to you." Lyra studied him, sensing both his honesty and the unspoken struggle within. "You speak as if we are already bound by fate," she said quietly. "Is that why your eyes burn with jealousy, even when nothing has happened?" Kale's jaw tightened and he looked away, pacing the length of the corridor. "It is more than jealousy," he admitted, almost to himself. "It is the knowledge that someone else could claim your heart and the curse would awaken. The kingdom would suffer and perhaps you would be lost." Lyra stepped closer, her hand brushing against the cold stone wall for courage. "I do not yet understand the curse or what it means to be bound to you. But I feel it in the air, in the way the shadows move, in the way destiny pulls at us both." Kale's eyes softened, a rare moment of vulnerability crossing his features. He reached out, but then hesitated, letting his hand fall to his side. "I cannot promise you peace," he said quietly. "I can only promise that I will stand between you and the darkness, whatever it may be." The tension between them crackled like lightning, unspoken words and desires stretching taut in the cold air. Lyra felt the pull in her chest, the strange, magnetic connection to him, and wondered what it meant to share a destiny she did not yet understand. Suddenly, the quiet of the night was shattered by a distant cry. Lyra stiffened, recognizing the sound as unnatural, filled with malice. Kale's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his sword. "The shadows have come," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "They seek to test us, and perhaps to take what is yours before it is claimed." Lyra followed him to the castle's outer walls, where the stone towers loomed like silent guardians. Together, they watched as a wave of darkness approached, a shapeless mass that moved with intelligence and intent. Kale's grip on his sword tightened, and the air between him and Lyra seemed to vibrate with unspoken emotion. "You should stay behind," Kale said, his voice firm yet trembling slightly. "I cannot risk you being harmed." Lyra shook her head. "No," she said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. "I can help. I have seen things before. I can sense the way this shadow moves." Kale's eyes searched hers, conflict raging. His jealousy and pride urged him to keep her away, but his desire to trust her, to let her be part of this, battled against it. Finally, he nodded, a silent acknowledgement of her courage. Together, they stepped onto the battlements as the shadow approached. It was a terrible, writhing form, its edges flickering like smoke, and it seemed to whisper secrets in a language older than the forest itself. Kale swung his sword, the blade glowing with blue fire cutting through the darkness, but the shadow reformed, twisting around him like liquid night. Lyra closed her eyes, reaching with her mind and senses, feeling the movements of the shadow, the rhythm of its attacks. "It moves to the left," she shouted, pointing. Kale shifted, striking with precise timing, and a part of the shadow dissolved into smoke. The battle raged, the night alive with energy. Kale moved like a storm, his sword a blur, while Lyra guided him, her voice steady and clear. Each strike, each movement drew them closer, their bond growing stronger as they faced danger together. Finally, with a final, decisive strike, Kale pierced the shadow at its core, and it let out a scream that echoed across the forest before vanishing completely. The air grew still again, the only sound the labored breaths of the two of them. Kale lowered his sword, his body tense, and looked at Lyra. For a moment, the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them, the danger gone but the emotion stronger than ever. "You were remarkable," he said quietly, his voice tinged with awe. I did not expect you to have such courage." Lyra's cheeks flushed, but she did not look away. "We faced it together," she said softly. "You would not have managed without me either." Kale's eyes darkened, the storm within him swirling once more. "I would not have wanted anyone else at my side," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. Jealousy and desire tangled together, making his words heavier than they seemed. They stood in silence for a long moment, the tension between them unspoken but undeniable. Then, from the forest below, a faint shimmer caught Lyra's eye, a figure watching, moving silently. She froze. "Kale's someone is out there, watching us." Kale's hand went to his sword again, his eyes scanning the darkness. "I thought we had dealt with all threats tonight," he muttered, a growl of frustration and unease escaping him. This is no ordinary shadow. Someone is testing us, and I suspect it is not just for you, Lyra." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" she asked, stepping closer to him instinctively. Kale's eyes softened slightly at her movement, a rare tenderness peeking through his guarded expression. "The curse," he said quietly. "It is ancient, older than any king of Eldrith, and it is not just a warning, it is a test of hearts, of loyalty, of fate itself. Whoever watches us now, they are part of this trial." Lyra's pulse quickened. She had glimpsed shadows before, fleeting visions of danger and choice, but nothing had felt as real, as immediate as this. And yet, despite the fear, she felt a strange thrill, an undeniable connection to Kale, as if their fates were entwined more tightly than ever. Kale turned to face her fully, his stormy eyes searching hers. "You need to understand something," he said, his voice low and urgent. "I will protect you, yes, but I cannot control what fate may demand, and I cannot hide my feelings. My jealousy, my desire, they are part of me, and you will feel them, whether you want to or not." Lyra swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. She had seen glimpses of her own destiny, but this, the depth of emotion, the intensity of connection, was more than she had imagined. "Then we must face it together," she said softly, "no matter what comes." Kale's lips pressed into a hard line, but a shadow of a smile touched his eyes. "Together," he agreed, though his heart beat with fear as much as hope. For the rest of the night, they patrolled the castle walls together, sensing the forest around them. Every rustle of leaves, every movement of shadow kept them alert, yet with each shared glance, each word, each touch, the bond between them grew stronger. Jealousy and desire, trust and fear, all intertwined like vines around their hearts. As dawn approached, painting the sky in shades of silver and violet, Cale and Lyra stood at the highest tower, overlooking the forest. The danger had passed for now, but both of them knew it was only a beginning. Then, from the edge of the forest, a figure emerged fully into view. It was cloaked, silent, and unyielding. Cale's hand tightened on his sword, and Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The figure watched them, waiting, and the air grew heavy with the sense of impending trials yet to come. Cale spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "This is not over. Whoever you are part of the curse, and you will not leave until the truth is revealed." Lyra stepped closer to him, her hand brushing his arm instinctively. "We can face it," she said softly, her voice steady despite the fear. "Together." Cale's eyes met hers, stormy and fierce, yet softened by trust and growing affection. "Together," he agreed, though inside, a fire of jealousy and love raged, promising that the trials ahead would test not only their courage but the very bond forming between them. And from the shadowed figure in the distance, eyes glinting like ice in the dawn, a whisper carried on the wind. "The true test has only begun, and destiny will demand a price." The sun rose over Eldrith in muted gold, casting long shadows across the castle and forest. Despite the light, a chill lingered in the air, a reminder that the curse of the Alpha King was not yet broken. Cale stood at the highest tower, his stormy eyes scanning the horizon. The mysterious figure from the forest had disappeared by dawn, but Cale knew it would return, and soon. Lyra appeared beside him, her cloak still damp from the night's mist, her expression thoughtful yet determined. "We cannot hide from what is coming," she said softly. "Whatever waits, it tests more than just our strength." Cale did not answer immediately. Instead, he studied her, feeling the pull of something deeper than fear or fate, something he had never felt before. Desire, protectiveness, and a strange tenderness intertwined inside him, all tempered by the jealousy that burned like fire in his chest. "You are right," he said finally, "and yet I cannot let you face it alone." Lyra's eyes met his, steady and calm, though her heart raced. "Then we face it together," she replied, echoing her promise from the night before. "No matter the danger, no matter the test." The forest stirred, the shadows bending and moving as if alive. From the tree line, the cloaked figure returned, now joined by two others. They were tall, silent, and their presence carried an unnatural weight, like the air itself had thickened around them. Cale's grip tightened on his sword, blue flames flickering along the edge, signaling readiness. Lyra felt the familiar pull of the unseen currents of fate. "They are not ordinary," she whispered. "These are beings tied to the curse, and they are testing us." Cale nodded, his jaw set in determination. "Then we do not falter, we meet them together." The first figure stepped forward, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Its voice was like wind over ice. "Alpha King Cale," it said, "the time has come to face the truth of your heart. The mate you claim will determine the fate of this kingdom. Choose wisely, for the shadows see all." Cale's eyes narrowed, stormy and fierce. "I will not let fear guide me," he said, though the words trembled with the weight of jealousy and desire. "And I will not let harm come to her." The second figure moved, circling them like a predator. Lyra felt the pull of power in the air, the force of the curse pressing on her mind, whispering doubts and visions of despair. Her hands trembled, but she held her ground. "We are stronger than fear," she said aloud, more to herself than anyone else. "And we are together. That is our strength." The third figure stepped closer, a shadow stretching from its form like ink in water. Its gaze fell on Lyra, and she felt a strange shiver run down her spine. "The bond is not yet proven," it said. "Only in the trials of heart and will can the darkness be held at bay. One false step, and all will fall." Cale stepped protectively in front of Lyra. "I will not fail her," he said fiercely, his voice carrying through the forest. "I will not fail the kingdom. And I will not fail myself." The shadows shifted, their forms dissolving into a swirling mist that rose into the sky. When it settled again, a path appeared, narrow, winding, leading deep into the forest. The trees were darker here, older, their roots twisting like veins beneath the earth. Kale turned to Lyra. "This is where the trial begins. We must walk it together." Lyra nodded, feeling both fear and resolve. "Then we begin," she said. As they moved along the path, the shadows of the forest seemed to reach for them, brushing against their skin like cold hands. Kale's presence was a constant shield at her side, yet the tension between them was almost unbearable. Every glance, every movement carried unspoken words, jealousy, desire, trust, and the fragile stirrings of love. At the heart of the forest, they came upon a clearing bathed in an eerie silver light. In the center stood an ancient stone altar, etched with runes that pulsed faintly. Lyra felt a pull in her chest, the same pull that had drawn her to Kale from the beginning. She understood in a flash that this place was the center of the curse, the test of hearts and fate. The shadows from before appeared again, circling the clearing. The first figure spoke. "To claim your mate, Alpha King, you must confront the truth of your heart, not desire, not pride. Only truth can break the curse." Kale's gaze softened as he looked at Lyra. "Truth," he repeated. His voice shook slightly, betraying the storm inside him. "Then I will speak it." Lyra waited, her heart hammering. She had seen the jealousy in his eyes, the fierce protectiveness, and the depth of feeling he tried to hide. But now, standing in the heart of the curse, she felt the power of his words before he spoke them. "I have been consumed by jealousy," Kale admitted, his voice low and raw. "Jealousy of anyone who might see you, speak to you, touch you. I thought it was fear or duty, but it is more. I feel it because I care for you more than I have ever cared for anything. And yet, I am terrified that my feelings might harm you, that my desire to protect might destroy you." Lyra stepped closer, her hand reaching for his. "Kale," she whispered, "you do not harm me, you protect me, and I feel the same. My path, my fate has always been uncertain, but with you I am not afraid." Kale's eyes softened, and for the first time in years the storm in his heart seemed to calm, if only slightly. "Then we face this together," he said, taking her hand firmly in his. "No matter the trial, no matter the shadows, we face it as one." The shadows twisted and pulsed, responding to their words, testing their resolve. From the mist, figures of their greatest fears appeared, visions of loss, betrayal, and failure. Lyra saw herself alone, wandering through a desolate forest, her heart heavy with regret. Kale saw his kingdom in ruins, his people crying, and Lyra lost to him forever. Yet they did not falter. Lyra's voice rang clear through the illusions. "We are together. These fears do not define us." Kale's sword glowed brighter, a blue flame that cut through the illusions. "Nothing will take her from me. Not shadows, not fate, not even the curse." The illusions shattered, dissipating into the night air. The shadows that had surrounded them recoiled, their power diminished by the strength of their bond and the truth of their hearts. The stone altar pulsed with light, brighter and brighter, until it seemed to touch the sky itself. The first figure spoke again, its voice calm, reverent. "The trial is complete. You have faced fear, jealousy, and desire, and you have chosen truth. The curse is broken not by power but by the bond between hearts." Kale looked at Lyra, awe and relief mingling in his eyes. "It is over," he whispered, though he could hardly believe it. Lyra smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "No, Kale," she said softly. "It is only the beginning. Together, we will face whatever comes next." The second figure, fading into shadow, nodded once. Then destiny moves forward, not as a threat but as a promise. Kale and Lyra stood hand in hand as the dawn light grew stronger, casting the forest in gold and silver. The curse that had haunted Eldrith for centuries had been broken, but they knew that life, even free from curses, was never without trials. Cale turned to Lyra, his eyes stormy but soft, a mixture of love, protectiveness, and lingering jealousy that had become a part of him. "You are mine," he said, though now the words carried neither threat nor fear, only devotion and trust. Lyra smiled, pressing her hand against his chest. "And you are mine, not because of a curse or destiny or fear, but because of us. We choose each other." The forest around them seemed to sigh, the shadows retreating, the wind gentle. The whispers of Eldrith's past and future settled into calm, carrying the promise of renewal and hope. Yet even in this moment of triumph, they could feel it, the faint pulse of destiny, ever watchful, reminding them that love, courage, and truth must be defended at every turn. And in that knowledge, Cale and Lyra found strength. As they walked back toward the castle, side by side, their hands intertwined, Cale felt the last trace of jealousy fade, replaced by respect and awe for the woman who had faced fear, shadows, and his own stormed heart with unwavering courage. Lyra, in turn, understood the depth of his protection and the power of a heart capable of such fierce love. The sun rose higher, spilling light across Eldrith, and for the first time in many years, the kingdom felt alive with hope. And though the shadows of the past lingered at the edges of the forest, Cale and Lyra knew they could face anything, as long as they faced it together.